Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first official Earth Dog Studios UFO podcast. I'm very excited to be here, and we got a terrific panel tonight to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction incident. So before I go too far, let me introduce my guests. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Todd Tochioka. Welcome, Todd.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is really exciting that you're getting this off the ground, sir.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being part of the first one. I'm a fan of your work, as some of the people probably already know. But for people just tuning in, can you tell us who you are and what you're mostly known for?
Yeah, I'm mostly known for the work I've done with Jim Valentino over at Shadowline. I was lucky enough to be on Shadowhawk lettering, the last one where Shadowhawk actually bites the bullet. And then from there was on a project that lasted just over a year, restoring the original 12 issues of Normal Man that were originally put out by Renegade Press back in the 80s, relettered and recolored. A bunch of pages for that, and so that was compiled into an omnibus, and boy, that was awesome.
Nice.
And as you know, since then I jumped on the Sabaton wagon, and now I'm lettering their stuff too.
Yeah, as you know, that's one of my favorites. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But Todd, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for helping me launch this project.
Absolutely, man.
I'd like to introduce you to my next guest, too. I've seen him occasionally on the podcast circuit. We have a couple of mutual friends. Please welcome C. Michael Lanning.
Hey. Oh, wow. Applause.
C, welcome, buddy. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's not often I get to talk about UFOs, so I'm more than happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is a kind of a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I wanted to sort of interview creators and see what they thought about some of these incidents in UFO history. In this case, tonight, we're going to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Mr. Producer, if you want to show us image number one, I'll ask you guys a couple of questions about this. The first thing, I'll start with Todd. Todd, first off, alien abduction, do you believe in it, and why?
Boy, I'm going to have to say I do believe in it, only because it hasn't been disproven yet. But also, I had a friend in high school, and his grandmother lived out in the desert and here in California, and he'd go to visit her, and you know what? He would tell me about these really strange dreams he'd have, and he would recall things being put into his body and would show me scars. So, you know,
oh my gosh,
you really can't discredit something like that. So it's hard to say that I don't believe in it. It's completely plausible.
Right. Yeah. See, how about you? Do you believe in alien abduction, and why?
I think that for the most part, yeah, I would have to say I do. Whether or not it's exactly alien abduction for real or what have you, I'm not 100% positive about it, or if it's something else. But I think there's too many accounts out there to discredit the phenomenon completely. So yeah, I would say I believe in it. Now, is it necessarily beings from out in space or have you? Maybe not. That I'm agnostic on, I guess you could say.
Gotcha. Yeah, good answer. Hey, and please welcome to the show, Zen. Welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me here. I'm excited.
Yeah, good to see you. Hey, I was just asking these guys about alien abduction. Would you say you believe in alien abduction, Zen? And if you do, why?
Okay, so yes, but is it aliens who are doing the abductions? Because I'll say I 100% believe in aliens. Even before the movie Contact, I would always tell people, every star in the sky, in the night sky, is a sun. One planet around our sun has life. So just mathematically, there has to be life out there somewhere. But when you specifically say abductions, that could be something else.
Gotcha. And by the way, I love that answer. I'll tell you why. We've said a number of times, if the universe is infinite, well, mathematically, as you said, the most likely alternative is that there has to be life in some form.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even necessarily have to be the type of life that we're used to. It doesn't have to be carbon-based. It could be silicon-based, or, even some type of consciousness stretched across a neuron mainframe, something like that. But tonight I wanted to focus directly on the Betty and Barney Hill incident. This happened in September 19th of 1961. And essentially what happened was you have this couple who claimed that they were abducted by aliens, and then they had this is a little bit of what you would call a repressed memory, right? They didn't remember necessarily what happened. And then later, after some therapy, some of these things came to light. So we'll keep going right around in a circle. I'm going to start with Todd. Todd, what's your thoughts on this regressed memory hypnosis? Is it a real thing? Is it kind of fake? What do you think is the deal there?
That's a really tough one to answer. Definitely, only because I read somewhere that 40% of what we think we're remembering could be completely false. So even if 10% of that memory has a chance of being something created just spur of the moment, hey, that 10% is a pretty wide percentage too. When even 1%, right?
Right. It could be a wide number.
Yeah. But they say that the brain is like a huge hard drive, and it just collects everything that we experience. Even if we aren't able to actually bring it to the forefront of our cache memory, it's still there somewhere. So what does that say? I don't know, right?
Right. Or even like a species memory. You guys heard that before? You could be remembering something from your ancestors.
Sure.
See, how about you? These hypnosis therapists, I guess there's a little bit of a controversy around it. Not everybody believes it's necessarily true. Do you believe in the repressed memories coming to life when they're brought up by a hypnotist?
Well, I haven't really dealt with it as far as very much until I started looking into this. And Todd's absolutely right. Just because we're going through that in hypnosis doesn't mean that it's an actual memory. That's just how our brains perceive of something. And when we get into this case a little bit more, I think we're going to see that there might be a little bit of a blur here between perception and what actually happened. And so I think this is actually a good case to look at the hypnosis on that. Even when they did it, they knew that it wasn't going to be 100%. There was always that chance that it wasn't fully a full memory.
Right. So. And that's kind of why I chose this case, because there's a good amount of information on either side. Zen, how about you? Repressed memories and hypnosis. Is it real or fake? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a real phenomenon. I don't think that every case that we hear is a real phenomenon, though, because as a society, we have so many archetypes in our brains. So if we can't explain what is happening to us, we're going to fit that the best way that we can describe it. So back in the day, that would be an angel or a demon or something. But now, because of today's society, we think it's a gray alien.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I actually have a question sort of based on that. And my question is going to be, it sort of ties into something Zen said earlier, and I'm going to go out of order, but you sort of brought it up. A lot of times when we talk about these alien encounters, they have the sense that people are sort of trying to process the information that they have seen, and the brain doesn't actually understand what it was viewing. And where I'm going with this is sometimes people say they are extraterrestrials, and some people feel it could be something extra dimensional. In other words, it might be something that was on Earth here the whole time. It's just we're not able to understand it, much the way that a dog can't see in color. So, Todd, do you have any thoughts about that? What about the theory specifically, extraterrestrials versus extra dimensional? What do you think?
Oh man, again, going down that rabbit hole of multiple dimensions existing cohesively at once. Gosh, that opens up, like I said, just a huge rabbit hole. Because I even feel like you could open up some kind of dimensional rabbit hole just by putting a mirror in front of another mirror, right? So, sometimes people talk about like apparitions and ghost sightings as some kind of almost energy that exists still from maybe possibly long ago, or possibly it's another reality or another dimension that's bleeding through. We've heard all those kinds of explanations for that, and they all, again, seem really plausible. It would be fantastic to really find out an answer during our lifetime whether actual dimensions, truly exist. And it may not be how we've come to know it through science fiction and through our interpretation, our creative interpretations of it. It may be something so different, right? That another dimension may all be fungus based, and maybe that already exists here. We just don't know how to identify it. The mycelium connection underground and everything is its own universe too, right? So I guess we have to say that universe upon universes could really exist when you break it down. My dog, her whole universe is taking a couple walks during the day and making sure she gets fed, right? And she's on this weird biological clock that she's created, and she's every like 2 hours she's coming to me and asking me for something. That's her whole universe.
Right.
I'm trying to explain, hey, I've got work to do. I've got some Sabaton pages to let her. Can you wait, please? She doesn't understand, right? Because that's my universe. So
yeah,
I think it's totally plausible.
Yeah, and like you say, that doesn't make it less real, right? See, what's your take on this? Is it possible that human beings can't quite comprehend the things that we are seeing, and that's why they say aliens?
To an extent, maybe on some things. On some things, though, when you look at let's say angel encounters and things that nature, those are pretty much spoken to you in English, or not English, forgive me, in their language that they're understanding, they're speaking. So I'm not too sure about that. As far as interdimensional being, I would lean towards that a lot more plausibly than I do outer space. And the reason why are extraterrestrial, and the reason for that is when we talk about physics and the amount of firepower that it would take to travel from star to star, it's like a nuclear blast. And in order for them to, unless they have something that we haven't discovered, or it's some kind of element on some planet or whatever, which I'm not ruling out, but we would probably see that evidence out there of somebody coming to this planet. Just like a star is, you see a dying star for, that's been dead for centuries, and we still see it in the sky until it finally falls for us. So I lean towards it being more interdimensional. I don't know if you AM Coast to Coast or Coast to Coast PM. I can't remember what it is. It's they talk about all the supernatural stuff and everything, and they had a phone call once from somebody who said that they worked on these type of things, and he was saying that it's not extraterrestrials, interdimensional.
Right.
So, and then that person disappeared and supposedly called back and said, "Oh no, it was all a hoax," but the voice was totally different. It's a whole conspiracy thing, but
yeah. I love stuff like that, man. It's right up my alley.
And Coast to Coast is good for that. So
I'll have to check that out. I'm not familiar with it. So Zen, what's your 2 cents on this? I sense that you have maybe a leaning toward the extra dimensional theory.
No, not a leaning, because like I was saying, I definitely believe there's aliens, and there's probably lots of different species of aliens from lots of different places. Some have visited us, some have never heard of us, some don't care about us. But the interdimensional thing is a very interesting aspect of it, because, we can only see a certain percentage of the world. Our brain can only process so much of it. Right. So they could literally be standing next to us right now, and we wouldn't even know about it. So I'm definitely very open to that theory, but I kind of don't want to open that box because it just brings up too many other things. I have enough in my brain of what I'm trying to think about, what's going on in the world, to factor that in as well as another option. But since we're going there, my other thing is, are aliens time travelers? Are they future humans that are coming back to visiting us? And what UFOs are just time machines.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a popular theory too, right? We talk about extra dimensional. Well, time is in fact a dimension. It's the 4th dimension. So I guess I would ask this question. If they were, let me think how I want to ask this. Let's say, for example, that they were extraterrestrial, they're creatures from another planet. C mentioned that they tend to not leave any kind of concrete evidence behind. How likely is it that extraterrestrial beings were traveling, not necessarily in an interstellar way, but actually traveling through the dimensions? First off, do you think that's likely or even possible? Todd, you can take this one first.
Sure, that is completely likely. Or maybe it's something as simple as maybe we're really overlooking this, and really trying to think about this too much. Every ancient civilization that thrived has come and gone, and they've been buried under sands or jungles or oceans or what have you, right, over the eons. Maybe travel to one of the ancient civilizations here on our planet that were completely terrestrial humans as we knew them. Maybe they just had different technology at the time, right? Because perhaps maybe that civilization lasted 10,000 years to 20,000, who knows, right? Could have.
Right.
But maybe they did develop something. Maybe they did develop something with the pyramids. Hey, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great point. And well, C kind of started this, right? Because he was saying, we love to say things like, well, there's not any concrete evidence left behind. But it's possible that there's lots of evidence and we just don't understand it. Like you mentioned the pyramids. See, how likely is it that things like the pyramids could be an example of ancient astronauts?
How likely is it?
I guess I'm saying, do you believe in that one?
The pyramids? No, I don't. Stonehenge, I'll give it a possibility. Maybe even some of the what is it? Not Mayan. What is
I was going to say the Mayan and Aztec pyramids.
Yeah, I think that's just a basic building structure. In all honesty, I actually, to be completely honest with you, I think that's more of a reflection of ancestral design dating all the way back to the Tower of Babel. Because when you look at structure and everything like that, you're not going to be building straight up, right? So I think that's just left over from ancestral design, as it were. I haven't seen now. Yes, there's been, say you have like the astronaut on the was it Aztec?
Yeah, I wrote about this in my Substack. It's an inscription on the guy's coffin, is what it is, and
Right.
It looks a little bit like he's seated at the controls of a spacecraft.
Right, but with the helmet and everything, right? And it looks like it
Yeah.
would be a spaceman or whatever the case is. And that could, and it's a possibility. I'm open to that being the case, or who knows? If we want to get really out into it, it could be even visionary. It could be even prophetic in its sense. We don't really know, or it could just be something that's similar again in design. I mean, after all, people, we're artists here. You deal with shapes, you deal with circles, triangles. I mean, you're talking of thousands and thousands of years of a human existence. I'm sure there's going to be something that's similar or familiar, or what's it, dysplasia, where you see faces and things, that kind of thing, where we see that, and that's what we associate it with, just kind of like our dimension, like we were talking about, right? Understanding it on our level when it was something to them totally different. So I wouldn't say that we don't necessarily, but again, that's evidence that we are not privy to the whole information to really, we don't have a Rosetta Stone for that kind of thing.
Right. We're just looking at one small piece and trying to figure it out.
Right.
I think I agree with what you're saying there too, because, sometimes people have said things like, well, this is really an artist representation. There's artists today that make these kind of far out things. But my question, or my answer to that question, is always, well, if it is an artist, what was he trying to convey, and who was he trying to tell this to? Because it certainly was unusual now, and it must have been unusual then. Zen, do you have any take on the ancient astronauts, and do you believe in ancient visitation?
Okay, so this is my, I guess you'd say my specialty, area. But before I get into that, real quick, I got to touch on what C said right there about the prophetic nature. we don't know how many of these civilizations were using mushrooms or other types of psychedelic plants that may have had them access some sort of visions that may astral project or see the future or whatever it might be. But to me, that's a different question. But as far as ancient astronauts, I have to be fully honest. Like 20 years ago, I was full on with the ancient astronaut theory. I was a hardcore ancient astronaut theorist. And like I said at the beginning, I believe in aliens 100%. But I don't believe in that theory anymore because I have come to believe that ancient human civilizations were just way more advanced than we accept. And they had technologies that helped us build all these structures. And they're just they're built by humans. That's what I believe. They just had amazing technology that we just don't know about anymore, like moving blocks with sound or cutting into the rocks with lasers.
Precision,
I'm
right.
open to a lot of different theories. There's a lot of proof out there. I could go on forever, but I truly believe that there was an ancient civilization here that built all these structures with a unified purpose.
Right.
Interesting.
Can I say something to that real quick?
Of course.
C.S. Lewis actually had a term, and I can't remember if it's like temporal snobbery or whatever the case is to look at the past as if they were primal or lesser than. And it's a very poor point of view to think the people before us were not as intelligent as us. They just didn't have some of the same resources we have. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Zen on that 100%. Yeah, totally.
Nice. I love C.S. Lewis too, man. He's one of my favorites of all time. So yeah, thanks for your perspective on that. I want to steer the conversation back to Betty and Barney. We talked a little bit about this repressed memory, and I do believe in it. And one of the things, Mr. Producer, if we can get a look at image number 2, when they brought her back from this hypnosis, Betty Hill, a suburban housewife, was able to draw this map from memory. And it was what they call a star map, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was what it turned out to be, analysts say it was a map of the Zeta Reticuli star system.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll start off by asking Todd. Todd, do you believe the map was of the star system?
Sure, why not, right? We weren't there, and heck, whoever the couple interacted with, they could have been told anything. She could have said, "Hey, what is this? I've never seen anything like this." And he could have said, "Oh, that is a map of the stars." But really, it's like what they're serving in their cafeteria,
That's kind of how that went down, actually, in a way. If you listen to the account that you gave, yeah.
So that could be a possibility. But shoot, wasn't there something about like she was going to take a book or something from them, and they're like,
yeah,
you can't have, or did they like kind of say you can't have that, but no, you can't really take it with you.
Yeah.
What was in that book? Maybe that was like the secret to time travel, like Zen was talking about. Maybe it's what C was talking about, like blueprints of how to make something out of some kind of thing you get at the ancient civilization supermarket or convenience store. Zip across the planet to visit your friend or something, right? Or it really could have been just a cookbook or
to serve man.
It was a recipe.
It's a fairly accurate map. Let's take a second and do a quick confirmation. So you look, there's what the version that she drew by freehand with a pencil, and there's the actual map. Right. So you can see they're pretty similar. First off, let's change the nature of the question. C, do you think that this is a coincidence that the two maps are so similar?
I don't. Carl Sagan actually weighed in on this also.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Carl Sagan weighed in on it. He said once you take the lines away, the similarities died away. But I don't think so. I have to disagree with Carl. I don't think the similarities died away. And even if there were certain stars, basically what it is she was being shown. If you don't mind, if I kind of expand on this a little bit, she was being shown. Well, she asked where they came from, and she was being shown in the star system where they came from. She's like, well, I don't understand what that means. Well, he asked, well, do you know where you are? And she said, no. As far as the stars are concerned, he said, well, then how can I tell you where we are? And so this whole thing, the fact is that she did draw this in repressed memory, and nobody's really denying that happened. That's in itself is impressive. I think, I don't know, it was somebody else that came up and made that correlation. Now, I think she actually, recanted it after Sagan weighed in, but I think that could have also just been because Carl Sagan weighed in at that point in time. In the 60s and the 70s, you had Sagan, and he was the Neil, Tyson, whatever his name is, at that time. But to me, I could see that, and even if you have extra stars in there, if they're looking at it from further out, it would make sense that they'd actually see more than we would in that. So I don't think it should be recanted. I think it's pretty impressive that it's as close as it is. So
yeah, it's Zen, could you chime in on this? What's your 2 cents? Are these two things similar enough to be accurate? Do you buy this story or not?
Yeah, no, I think that this has a very good chance of being accurate. Is it because of accurate for the reasons they say it is a different question, because maybe this was a map that somebody found independently, something older, and they used this as proof that this is something that's real. So I'm open to a lot of different interpretations, but looking at them side by side, to me, I'm convinced.
Yeah, it's hard to discount as being fake when you see. I mean, this is a pretty good example. I'm sorry, this isn't exactly the highest quality graphic. This is something I found on Reddit, but it does show you the outline. And even if you look at the top layer, it's even got like the crooks and the, and the angles and stuff. That's a fairly accurate representation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's the fact that she came out of a repressed hypnosis to have that diagram, unless she was an astrologist herself, and Betty wasn't. It's pretty damn close and pretty damn impressive at that. So,
yeah,
that alone, I think, gives it some validity. Yeah.
So I guess one of the things that's the most interesting to me is that the first thing is the Hills, if this was a hoax, they took the secret to their graves, right? They kept it a secret all those years. And I guess I kind of want to zero in on, is it a hoax or isn't it? And, what I really want to do is hear you guys' opinions. I love to hear the thoughts behind creative people and how they approach these sort of mysteries. I will tell you, to me, it seems kind of unlikely that it was a hoax. And my reason is, remember, you're talking about 1961. There's no internet fame. There's no clout. People that saw UFOs were certainly not viewed in a positive light. So I guess my question is, let's jump right to it. Todd, could this have been a hoax? And if so, why?
Sure. It could have been, to play devil's advocate, it could have been a complete hoax. Betty went on to give speeches and talk to groups. And even if that group only had 5 people in it, what if 2 of those people, or even one person, might have known someone who's connected to some funding, who was like, hey, I know someone who would really like to have you over Friday night to speak to a particular group. They're willing to pay your airfare, your room and board, and we'll rent you a Cadillac or something. You never know.
Possible. Yeah, I appreciate the perspective. See, how about you? The Hill incident, hoax or not a hoax?
Absolutely not a hoax. Absolutely not a hoax.
Expand on that a little bit.
Okay. Whether or not this is exactly concrete what happened, I think is still open to interpretation. But something happened, regardless of how it is. And even the government officials agree that something happened. You're talking about, okay, yeah, lie detector tests aren't 100%, but they took several of these. But even more so, the fact is how it got leaked, right? They didn't just go out. Like you said, this is 1961. By the time it's leaked, I think it's 1964 or 65 before it starts surfacing, right?
Right.
And the thing is, they didn't leak it. They weren't the ones that started talking about it. They had actually discussed this incident with their church group.
Right, and it was a reporter or something broke it.
It was a
wasn't it?
reporter, right? That got a hold of the information, and it came out, and so they decided to go ahead and expand on it and opened it up some more. So yeah, no, absolutely not a hoax. Now later on, Betty did kind of get out there where she started seeing UFOs and street lamps and stuff like that, and even some people in the community, in the UFO community, who still believe that, were kind of concerned about her validity on that. But let's talk about it in the respect of somebody dealing with PTSD, right? I mean, if you're talking about a very tragic, you might have had like an alien movie or whatever the case is that set the tone, and it's going to be a horror tone at that, Outer Limits, space alien movies, Mars Attacks, all that kind of thing, and not the Tim Burton Mars Attacks, but just to put that out there. But that's what's in the public's conscious, right? So when you're dealing with something that's happening to you that's tragic and is on that same lines, you're going to have some type of trauma in that, to where, oh, that might not be a gunshot, but you might hear one. It's how you perceive it. So I definitely don't think that this is a hoax. After all, Barney himself was not. I don't think Barney wanted to believe it at all. He was a military man. He was a quiet man. He was to himself. So this is, and even Betty herself was not into all this before this happened. So no, absolutely not a hoax.
Zen, how about you? I'm passing you the ball. The Hill abduction, hoax or not a hoax?
Right. So if it is a hoax, why? And why then? What's going on? Like, is this a distraction from something else? Or is this part of a bigger long-term disclosure, story? So they have to put out kernels in the past foreshadowing something for the future. So either way, if it's real or not, hoax or not, like C was saying, I think it was C, something happened here. Something happened, and somebody is using this story for a agenda. Which one? I can't say for sure.
What kind of agenda? What, can you be a little more specific?
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, is this a bigger disclosure thing? Because if you look at now, now we've had all sorts of crazy disclosure stuff that people aren't paying attention to. But would that make sense if we didn't have a historical precedent for these things happening already? If they just drop that on us now, we'd be like, oh, whoa, what's going on? But if we've had stories going back to 1947 or, whatever date that we're saying, we've had family members, possibly my grandma might have had a experience. It might not be such a shocking thing for us today to have that disclosure. And again, distraction. What was going on right then? Maybe it was a military situation that went bad. So they used this UFO as a cover-up story to have people distracted and talking about, oh, what happened? And they're nowhere close to the truth of what actually happened.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. And there's one more angle, and I hesitated to bring this up, but I guess there's, we're going to clear the air and we're going to talk about all the elements. The other thing, remember, it was 1961 and the Hills were an interracial couple. Yeah. Well, all of us, in 2024, that's not very shocking, right? It's certainly, hey, man, it is what it is. And, everybody deserves to get married to whoever they want. Friendly reminder, 1961, the world was not like that. And one of my reasonings is that I can't imagine a scenario where they would have wanted to draw attention to themselves, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So and by the way, if this is somehow inappropriate or anything, I think you guys know it could be sensitive, but what's your 2 cents on this, Todd? Do you think is there an element of racial bias in this story?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think, like you guys were saying, something definitely happened, whether it was alien or not, whether it's some kind of foreshadowing for something that's going to be happening down the road, who knows? But these people, this couple, they were definitely moved in a way where they were a part of something. And I mean, if we're talking about things like, let's say, memory repression or something like that, right? What other memories didn't come out? Are there, if we go even deeper into, let's say, mind control theory, are there certain memories that are even deeper that shows that they were complicit with this whole thing? Who knows? But something traumatic definitely happened to this couple.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. See, I'll give this to you next. Like I say, do you think there was a racial element, or maybe even some kind of bias in this case?
Well, let me address this. Okay, that theory was brought up as far as the stresses that the Hills underwent on whether or not that was influencing in their witness, as far as what happened. And the Hills went on record as saying they actually never had any problems about being a mixed marriage. Remember now, this is New Hampshire. All right. At that point in time, you're dealing with Jim Crow here in the South. So there's a little bit more of an openness, up north in that area, right? They went on record as saying that they didn't have those type of stresses. Now she was I think she worked for like child protection services. But what I think is what really gets me is the fact that Barney was a military man.
Right.
He's on record. And that's what caught me about this more than anything it's interesting that it was a military man that was targeted.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now here Indian Head is about a 2-hour drive from Peace Naval Air Force or Peace Air Force base or air base, whatever the case is. And I thought that was interesting as well, that an Air Force base was so close by. I mean, yeah, it's a 2-hour drive, but you know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
and then the fact that Barney came out of World War II. World War II ended what? Let's see. I think Roswell happened in 47 or 46. 47?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, right. And World War II ended in 45. So we're talking about a supercharged government right now that's looking for a common enemy as it is anyway. So I wouldn't be, experiments and all sorts of things that come into that nature. So I don't think necessarily that Travis.
Travis.
I don't think that that necessarily had a role in it as far as being picked, because I think that could have been there's a whole gamut that could have been there, but I think there might be other aspects to it. So I guess that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does a lot, and I think you're right about Roswell too. That was, the ink was still wet on the Roswell incident, right? People were still talking about it. So, Zen, how about you? Do you think that in this case, an element of racial bias played any part, or is it just a coincidence?
I never knew about that. I never thought about that. I guess that's because we're in our society now. But I will share that I just found out recently that, and I know Mississippi is different than up north, but I found out recently that interracial marriage was illegal to like the late 70s. So
a friendly reminder, this is before the Civil Rights Act. It's
so that's very recent, in our age, that was in our lifetime that was illegal. So that's the only thing, is that I would double down on your point saying that that's interesting. I'd have to think about that some more, but yeah, that's very true.
Well, and the reason why I like to mention it is it was, and again, I always want to approach such issues with sensitivity and so forth. But
no, because it was part of the atmosphere that was going on at the time.
And I think they might have been afraid to have people notice. My guess is they might have wanted to be left alone. I think it was Todd that said the main thing was these people came out of this very traumatic experience, and once they started to, unveil these repressed memories, they were very traumatic and very sort of we'll tell you what, let's center on that. We're going to talk a little bit about the nature of alien abductions. Has a lot of, I guess, what I would call invasive medical types of experiments.
Oh, yes.
So let's take a quick round of that. If it is how do I want to ask this question? The invasive medical experiments seem to be a big part of alien abduction. Why do you think that is, Todd?
Well, if let's go with two different angles, right? The first one, let's say they're totally from a they are alien to us, whether that's interdimensional or interplanetary. They are definitely alien with technology that we don't have, and they're coming and they're experimenting with things that seem very invasive, such as experimenting with removing reproductive organs
Right.
or tampering with that, right? Um, let's say that it's completely real. I mean, it makes sense they would want to know how we reproduce, whether that's just because they're studying us or they want to make sure that we don't reproduce too much. Who knows? Okay, well, let's go with the other angle and say that that it's not alien. Let's say that it is some other kind of traumatic experience that happened to these people, and this is the way that the brain is kind of wrapping around the trauma that actually happened. Um, so, because we're saying, we really don't know what other repressed memories there are in their heads. Um, so, let's say they're not aliens that are doing this to us. What if it's just a general fear tactic? I mean, and as guys, when we're growing up, I mean, I playing baseball. What's the first thing you learn is to protect your reproductive.
Point.
Yeah, yep. Even a squirrel knows protect your nuts.
To this day, there you can't. It's just going to happen. They're adjusting their junk because it's uncomfortable, but you got to protect that because that's scary to get hit there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hey, if this is all a setup of, like Zen was saying, of something that's going to come down the road, so they don't completely frazzle our mind. What do? You make sure that, boy, you protect those nuts, you protect those ovaries, whatever it takes, right? That's scary. Take my arm, but don't
Yeah, right.
need my drawing hand.
You can have the hand, but leave the crotch alone. Yeah.
See, what do you make of that? So, if you start to read through these accounts of UFO abduction lore, you might make the point that this is the most prominent element. There's always some kind of invasive procedure and, ovaries being stolen, weird experiments. Why do you think it is?
Okay. Well, okay. Let's say, for instance, I think in the base, the most basic thing is, if it's aliens, it's human experimentation. I hope, if I'm overstepping here, but Betty, in this situation, Betty had a long needle that was pressed into her stomach.
Right.
All right. She asked what it was, and I'm not getting ahead of you because I don't know what you're. Okay. And she went, and it hurt. And the guy the leader, all we really know, put his hand in front of her eyes, and the pain went away or whatever, because they told her it wasn't going to hurt, and it hurt.
Right.
And he apologized that it hurt. These were very cordial aliens. And except for that. And when asked what it was, they told her it was a pregnancy test. Right.
Right.
But let's take it from an angle that it's not aliens per se. Did this actually happen? I got two things for this I was thinking about. One, let's say it's government interference and it's government experimentation, because if you did this type of experimentation under the watchful eye of certain divisions, that were, are keeping in line with human rights, you wouldn't be able to stick this needle in somebody's stomach for whatever reason that you're doing it, right? Or take ovaries or whatever the case is, right? And now, also, I'd like to point out that Betty couldn't have children. So that's another factor that comes in. But then there's also, let's say this account came from the I keep saying it wrong. Repressed memories.
Repressed
memories. This came from the repressed hypnosis, right?
Right.
And there was a movie, and this is a long shot, and I'm not saying this whatsoever, but there was a movie in 1959. Yeah, about 59. So I think they had the hypnosis in 64, 63. It was several years after the abduction had happened. Where there was aliens. They were abducting people in about the same type of manner, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't, lifted from actual accounts. Where they took a long needle and stuck it in the back of somebody's head. And I had the name of the movie somewhere. Unfortunately, I left my phone somewhere. It's because I just read it. But and the thought was maybe that after she actually got into a lot of UFO stuff after the abduction had happened and they had talked about it, her sister was actually into the UFO thing. She wasn't before this happened. That maybe that was a memory that was fabricated in her mind over something that had happened. And I get that's a possibility. So, and I think again, that's in the public mind is what we like, the alien probing, right? I mean, it's been a joke for several years. It's in mind now, but if it's aliens, sure, I think it's more likely that it would be trying to understand the life, just like us dissecting a frog or what have you. But if it's the government, I think they're using different means than they're allowed to do on the surface. So
I like that answer. It's interesting, the supposition that, well, as some of you guys know, I'm very anti-government. So any kind of theory that goes down that road, I'm almost always interested in. Zen, what do you make of this? Like we were saying, essentially, the invasive procedure is almost always an element in these kind of cases. Why do you think it is?
Right. So I think that this is part of a theory that I'm like really on board with, but I can't say I'm 100% down with. But the Enki and Enlil story, are you guys familiar with that? How that there was these aliens back in the day that came to Earth to mine gold, and they took the monkeys there, and they did a genetic hybrid with the monkeys and their alien DNA to make humans. Was like they're mixing their DNA, and then they use that species to mine gold, and that's what we eventually became. Maybe it's like the references that people are saying, for sure. Now, if they did make us, if we are their product, of course they'd want to come back and check in and be like, a couple of years later, 1,000 years later, check in on that DNA, see how it mixed, see how future generations came out. So Anunnaki, that's what it is. Yeah.
Spirits of the gods.
Yeah. Now I do know what you're referring to. Thank you, Chris Hall, for the comments.
Yeah. What's up, Chris? But yeah, definitely. I think that if that's the case, they would definitely want to check in on humans and see how their project is going. See if they need to push and pull any DNA in a certain way. See if it's going a certain way so they can replicate that process on a different planet. So to me, that makes sense that they'd want to look and see what's inside us.
It actually does make a lot of sense phrased that way. I was going to make a quick comment. Again, I don't want to veer too far off the topic, but there's another guy, the case of Bob Lazar, he's the fellow who claimed that he worked at Area 51. And he had kind of a comment about this, well, loosely based on this. And what he said was, and first of all, hey, we're just talking about things. When I mention it, this isn't necessarily a reflection of our beliefs to anybody out there in viewer land. But what he suggested was that religion had been installed by an alien civilization. And the reason why is that human beings were considered the property of the aliens, and that we were essentially the containers for these resources that they needed, in this case, the soul. And what he said was religion was installed because humans kept damaging the containers, meaning we kept fighting with each other. So they tried to instill a religion. I just thought that was a fascinating take.
Well, that backfired, didn't it? But
yeah, it sure did. If you guys don't mind, let's talk about that one just for one quick round. Todd, what do you think is the likelihood of any type of ancient religion or ancient philosophy potentially having been installed by civilizations other than our own? What's your 2 cents?
Oh boy, that's 110% plausible, right? I mean, geez, if we're any reflection of any of our ancient civilizations or any of the ancients that have been part of the history of this planet, then yeah, then there's a racket going on somewhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah. See, what's your 2 cents? Is there any likelihood that philosophy could have been installed by an alien civilization?
Uh, it's possible, but I think mankind can do that itself. I don't think it
Good
necessarily,
angle.
necessarily needs the that thing. But let's take it from an instant. Let's take this for instance as gods. They say the sons of gods that were prevalent in Genesis and later on in the book of Enoch, that they were angels. They were fallen angels that had come to earth and they procreated with man and what have you. The thing is, okay, so now we have to decide if this is aliens or if it's the spiritual warfare trying to link things. Since science has become prevalent in the past century or so, how do we know that this isn't a spiritual thing? Using science as an equipment to hide, just like they used worship and religion back thousands of years ago, which was also prevalent at that point in time. So it's hard to say, but like I said, I come back to the fact that I think mankind is pretty damn good at making up their own things. If we want to go into it, let's look at a science fiction writer who said that I can make more money making my own religion than I can writing short stories, and he did, and it's a very prevalent religion today. Yeah, it's a very prevalent religion today. I don't think that was an alien thing. So
yeah, that's a really good point. And also, it's what do they call it? It's Occam's razor. The simplest explanation usually turns out to be the simple one. Zen, can you add your 2 cents to this? What do you think is the possibility of us?
You wrapped up my position really well. I've studied religion all my life. I had enough credits in college to have a minor in religion. I'm not religious, but I'm fluent in all world religions. I love the subject, and it's made by man. Man concocted religion. It's a control technique to put down women and to keep certain people underfoot. So that's my thing on religion. Now, could aliens have influenced religion? Sure, because we even influence people. Like there's that tribe that had the island in the Pacific that built like an altar to the plane because the people were dropping off food, so to them that was a god. So if an alien popped up, I'm pretty sure people would think that's God or some sort of God. So I wouldn't be surprised if some religions were based off of that, but right now I can't think of any. I'm kind of on the spot, but I bet you if I thought about it, there probably is something like that, but I can't think of anything that directly correlates like that.
Yeah, that's and again, I didn't mean to get off topic with that one, but it all does tie loosely together, right? And there was one comment that I wanted to bring up here, which I thought was interesting. Chris Hall mentions the angle alien abductions are linked to night terrors and sleep paralysis. It's our brains translating being helpless into the most invasive procedure we can think of.
Great point. Great.
That's a really good one.
But the only problem that I have with that is, let's take into consideration that Betty and Marty, this didn't happen when they were in bed. We're not looking at alien abductions happening when people are sleeping in bed and waking up in the middle of the night and trying to translate this. We're seeing that they were traveling on a long distance. It was supposed to be about, I think it was like maybe 4 hours to their destination. They were trying to get home before a hurricane was supposed to hit at that time. And then they lose time. In fact, they lost time. And they didn't even realize they had lost time until somebody pointed that out to them. Which to that extent, that becomes a physical evidence. So if this is something that you're laying in bed and having problems trying to reason within yourself, it becomes a problem because did they fall asleep behind the wheel and then wake up in their destination? Did they have sleep paralysis while they were driving? That's the thing. When you look at a lot of these alien abductions or alien encounters and things, they're not typically, and I say typically, I'm not saying that always, but they're not typically happening in people's homes. They're happening out in fields, on abandoned roads, things of that nature, places that are not somebody's not really taking a nap, if you get what I'm saying.
I do.
So I think that actually falls down.
Interesting. So, we're almost to our time, but before we go, I love talking to creative people and I love to gather their viewpoints on issues that are interesting to me, and I'm hoping that it'll be interesting to viewers too. But I want to learn a little bit about what kind of things you guys are making. So let's take a quick look at one here, shall we? I've got this one right here. This is Zen. Zen, tell us a little bit about what you're making.
Yeah, so I've been a production designer at Rogue Matter since August of 2023. So I've been putting together basically all of their books, putting it together for online content and putting together the single issues to make into trade paperbacks for print. So yeah, we got a lot of our #1 titles up on the website, roguematter.com, available as free downloads. So you can sample the first issue of all these different titles and see if you like it. And if you like it, then you might, you can pick it up digitally, or maybe pick up a printed book at LA Comic-Con coming up in a month.
Oh, nice. Well, I'll definitely take a look at that. I'll definitely take a look. So before we go, let's see if we can reach a final consensus on the Hill abduction incident. And what I want to know is strictly, was it a hoax or wasn't? I'm going to say, based on the things we talked about, this does not seem like a hoax to me. So let's quick go around the room. Todd, Hill abduction, hoax or not a hoax?
Gosh, something happened to these poor people. And so that is real. Something traumatic happened to these people, whether it was alien or not, we don't know. We can't prove it, but a lot of stories say that it was alien abduction, right?
Yeah.
Something happened though.
Something happened. Well said. See, what's your 2 cents?
Hoax definitely not a hoax. Like I said, I think something happened. I think even they equate it to aliens. If whether or not it is, that's what the fine point is. But as far as something happening, it definitely happened.
Gotcha. Zen, you're going to get the final word tonight. The Hill abduction, hoax or not a hoax?
Not a hoax. 100% not a hoax. Something happened. Can we sit here and noodle the details? Absolutely. But yeah, not a hoax. Big part of the whole scheme of UFO phenomenon.
Something happened. Something happened. Well, I got to tell you, I am grateful to have you guys on. And I thought you had some very thoughtful and, well, in some cases, provocative opinions about what might have happened, right? And I love to learn more about these incidents in UFO lore. So I want to say thanks for coming on the first show here with our new UFO podcast.
Thank you.
To the viewers, please come back. We're going to do this the first Friday of every month. And you guys are all welcome to come back anytime you want to come and chat about stuff. To the rest of you guys, we will see you next Friday when we resume the Creative Cranium, which is our podcast for creative comic book people. So other than that, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.